Hello and welcome to another video. In this one, we're answering a question that came from a YouTube comment, which says, I'm working with mypy, but a lot of my dependencies don't have types for them yet. How can I, tell mypy what the types are without potentially having to make upstream changes? And today I'm going to show you about stubs in mypy and how you can kind of, type your dependencies without them having to have type stuff. Anyway, let's jump into it. Okay, so for today, I'm mostly going to be talking about hacking it together in the current repository. There are ways to distribute stubs, so you don't have to do this on your own, or you don't have to duplicate code. But I'm just going to show you a very simple example where we're going to type, we're gonna throw some type annotations into a file and improve the output that we get from our code. And today I'm working with Markdown code blocks. If I go here, this is a library that I wrote that does some pigments highlighting for Markdown so that you can get nice, pretty syntax highlighted stuff. But let's pip install mypy. We are currently using version 812. And if we run mypy on markdown-codeblocks.py, you'll see that we get a bunch of errors. You'll see that it says, cannot find implementation or library stub for module named mystoon. We also get this for pigments as well, and I'm going to show you how to make these errors kind of go away and how we can convince mypy of some particular implementation detail here. So to get started with this, I am going to add a directory to my code repository. We're going to call this stubs. And inside this stubs directory, we're going to make our own type annotations for these other libraries, which are missing. And we also need to tell mypy that that's where the things live. So let's look for the mypy configuration, and we're going to set the mypy path. And this can be a colon separated list of things, but we only have one thing that we're going to put in here, so we're just going to say stubs. And in reality, if I probably did pip install mystoon, they might actually have already done distributable. No, they have not done distributable. Pip uninstall mystoon. Some libraries distribute type annotations with themselves and put a little py.typed file in there, and mypy can follow that as well. So sometimes installing your dependencies can make it find these libraries as well. But let's pretend we can't do any of those things today. And so what we're going to do here is we are going to make stubs for mystoon. And if we actually install the version that's required here, I'm going to do that in a separate virtual environment just so that it doesn't pollute here. virtualenv vm2. Pip install this. We gotta quote it because otherwise we'll get shell redirection. And I'm going to look at the module itself, and then we're going to make kind of a skeleton of that inside the stubs directory. If we look inside the vm2 lib python site packages, okay, mystoon is a package, so we're going to start by doing make dir stub/mystoon. And we are going to put a /nit.py file. Note that py is different than py. This is the stubs format file that we have here. And if we look at, actually, if we run this command that was failing before, you'll see that we get a different error now. We now get HTML renderer is not defined. So we need this in some way or another. Oh, also it says markdown. It's not a thing either. So let's look at that module and figure out where those things come from. So we'll look at mystoon/nit, and there are tools that automate this, but I'm kind of showing you the slow way to do this today. So it looks like HTML renderer comes from a renderers submodule. So if we do stub/mystoon/renderers.py, and we're going to make a class HTML renderer, and it's highly encouraged in stub files to just use ... for any implementation details. So just to start, we're going to make this boring HTML renderer class, and inside of our init.py file, we are going to replicate this import here. So we're going to do from renderers import HTML renderer. And in py, to re-export a name, you need to do this kind of silly redundant as statement. This is how to say that you're explicitly re-exporting this name. So now if we run this, you'll see that that HTML renderer thing has gone away, which is kind of neat. Let's also do this markdown. What is markdown here? run.markdown import.markdown. So we'll just do that in here as well. Import markdown as markdown, and we need to make a stub for that, markdown.py. And I think markdown is just a class, right? Yep, class markdown, and we'll follow this here. And actually, what happens if we do this? I think this will actually error. Yeah, too many arguments for markdown. So we need to actually take some of the double under knit here and stub that out here. So we can improve our stub by doing double under knit self renderer. We know this has to be a renderer, but we'll figure out what that type is in a second. And I'm going to ignore the rest of these arguments for now. We don't actually need them for my code. So this is going to be an intentionally incomplete plugin, or incomplete stub. And I believe there's a base class for renderer inside this file. Renderers. Base renderer. Base renderer. Okay, I was wrong there. And so now we actually have to go to the renderers .py file and improve that one. So we have class base renderer, and we don't really care about its implementation. And you'll see that we get an HTML render is a base renderer. Base renderer. Okay. And we have now fixed this too many arguments, but now we have markdown is not callable. So that means if we look at markdown here, we should see a call, and it looks like it takes a string and returns a string. Oops. So if we go back to this file, we are going to add a call method, and the normal convention is just butt all these functions up against each other, kind of conserve as much space as possible, which is pretty different from how you normally write code in Python, but that's the recommendation for all of the style guidelines I've seen for PyI files. And so this call function takes a string and returns a string, and so you can see now we have fixed mistoon, and so now if we actually, let's do ignore missing imports just to make these ones go away, we actually have much better answers to this real type highlight hello. So before our stubs, well, after our stubs, you'll see that it reveals this type as built-in stir. Oh, actually, we need to reveal type in here. Right, that won't change. Reveal type ret, return ret. So if we reveal this type now, you can see that it knows that it's a string. However, if we turn off that mypy path, turn off our little stub generation there, you'll see that mypy doesn't know the type of that, and it, you know, when it doesn't follow imports, or when you have ignore missing imports, it's just going to default to any for anything that it doesn't know. And any is kind of like the squishy type, which allows any attribute access, any call. It kind of turns off the type checker in a way. But anyway, that's how you can make a, you know, set of PyI files to represent a particular library that might not have its own type annotations, and how you can adjust your mypy invocation to, you know, handle these step files and make your code more typed. But anyway, hopefully this was useful. If you have additional things you would like me to explain, leave a comment below or reach out to me on the various platforms. But thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.